You're listening to the Art of Quantum Healing podcast with your host, Leisa Nadler. Each week we'll be welcoming divine souls who have overcome trauma, mental health addiction, and found next level abundance through mind, body, and soul connection. We will be going deep on one subject to teach and guide you. My mission is to help you high vibe, thrive with inner peace, passion, and purpose, all in the name of evolution. Welcome to another edition of the Art of Quantum Healing. Today I've got a beautiful divine woman on who's joining us, and we're going to be going deep into mental health and trauma as a childhood. So I'd like to introduce the beautiful Danielle McLean. How are you?
I am wonderful. Thank you so much for having me. Any opportunity to talk about this, it just fills my cup. So I'm so grateful to be here.
And any opportunity we can share and help other people with by doing it is friggin' awesome, right? I tell you. So I'm just going to share your beautiful bio just so that the audience can get to be submerged into your beautiful juiciness and your energy and see, a little bit of where you've come and where you are now. So Danielle established in November 2020 Cause Friction. I love that. And it's a mental health podcast that encourages millennials to give mindfulness a shot in order to stop living on autopilot, live lighter, and also confidently make decisions with greater purpose. Through her own experiences with PTSD, depression, as well as being diagnosed in borderline personality disorder as a direct result from trauma. Danielle, Dani. So you like to be called Dani as well. I've been calling you Danielle. That's easy. I remember Dani. I love that. Dani has personally found significant healing through practicing mindfulness that she wants to share her own experiences, pass along everything she has learned through years of therapy and in life, and in turn, hopefully assist others in their healing journey. Beautiful. I love that.
Yep. Honestly, hearing that all out loud sometimes puts back into perspective, like, you know what? Damn, I have been through a lot and I am proud of where I am. So thank you for that nice reminder. Yeah, I feel like I needed that today, So yeah, my name is Danielle. I go by either or. Dani is a very friendly term for me. Danielle's a little bit more formal and professional. But I like Dani. I think it's cute.
Yeah, I think it's really cute.
And yeah, so why I'm really here is I think that we have just gotten so caught up in the day-to-day, the do's. We don't really understand the why or the how or how it makes you feel. And that was the most pivotal thing in my healing journey. So what I'm going to go back to is the fact that healing was and is very different for me because of my childhood. Right. My childhood was not normal, and I felt like my entire life, all I've been doing was trying to be normal and try to keep up with bad times and just constantly try to be okay. And into my adult life, it kind of felt like every day, all I was trying to do was heal from my past.
Yeah.
And I would say that I didn't really get the chance to heal, and I say quotations because I didn't understand what that meant.
Yeah.
Until 2 years ago when I decided to really take it seriously. And what I look back and realize is that for the better part of my life, I was not necessarily trying to heal. I was just trying to get out of survival mode. Because of my childhood and because of my trauma, that survival mode never switched off. And I didn't realize that I could switch it off. Yeah. And that was pivotal in my healing journey as well. And I just was constantly waiting for more bad to come, that I was in fight or flight 24/7. And it was draining. I was a very unhappy person. I was diagnosed with depression, PTSD, borderline personality disorder. And the main component of borderline personality disorder is very intense mood swings with the inability to regulate emotions.
Wow.
When you think of childhood and you think of trauma.
Yeah, holy shit.
Yeah. It's like, well, that makes sense, doesn't it?
So what do they do? They give you a pill and go, here you go, take this and you're going to be okay?
So with borderline personality disorder, it's actually really common that there isn't any kind of medication that can be prescribed. It's the depression part that they would prescribe
Right.
medication
Yeah.
for.
Yeah.
But for me, they're like, well, nothing really you can do except deal with it. Like, be mindful of your emotions and learn how to regulate. And I'm like, how are you supposed to do that? Like, how
Exactly. If
can
you
you
knew
just
the
tell
how, you already
someone
would. Yeah.
100%? So, my entire process, and I was also diagnosed at like 18 years old. And
Oh, wow.
when you're 18, you have so many other things going on. Like, number one, you're hormonal. So, everything just feels intense.
Mm,
Um, on top of that, you're trying to figure out who you are as a person. On top of that, I'm trying to figure out where I'm going to school. What am I trying to do? What is my purpose? On
yeah.
top of all of that, I'm trying to think of how am I going to have a purpose? What is my purpose with my past? Like, there's
Mm,
so many moving parts, and then this diagnosis, it at first made me feel seen, heard, and gave me a reason as to why I was the way that I was.
yeah.
Because I was a very angry, um, very misunderstood, and I just looked at the world like everything was out to get me
Yeah.
because I was playing the victim when
Yeah.
it came down to it.
Yeah.
And I didn't really come to terms with that and understand what it meant and how to switch it off until 2 years ago when I decided to frame the question differently for myself. So it wasn't like, okay, how am I going to heal? What is my time to heal? It
Mm.
was more of, how am I going to take it seriously?
And
Because
how
I've
old are
been
you
in and
now?
out of therapy since I was like 5 years old.
How old are you
I am
now?
29.
Wow. So you were diagnosed when you were 18, and at 27, you started dealing with it. That's a
Yeah,
very confusing space to be in between.
it really is. And it was the most, I think, impressionable years of my life as a young woman because I didn't know who I was.
Mm,
And I was trying to figure out who I was and also how to heal from something that basically I dealt with for X amount of years. So, how do you heal from something in 6 months, 3 months, 1 year, but it took X number of years
mm, mm.
to learn those negative patterns? So, if I learned something for 27 years of living,
It's weird,
how am
isn't
I
it?
now going
It's a
to unlearn
programming.
that in a
Yeah.
year?
Yeah. Had to go on a whole new reparenting yourself to understand, like breaking it all down. It's and when you're so used to living in survival mode, your neurological responses are, the anger and because you're squashing down your emotions from when you're a child, it's just sitting there bubbling up. So why did it take you so long from between 18 and 27 to actually decide, okay, I need to do something? Was there a pivotal moment, or was it just like, oh, okay, that's time?
Yeah, so what it was for me was a really toxic relationship that I was in. So it was very common in my past relationships for them all to end very similarly. And I didn't understand why. And I just couldn't understand
It's
what
always
could
happened to
possibly be the
me.
problem. And what happened when I was mid very toxic, abusive fight,
Mm.
the person I was fighting with looked at me and said, "You are literally doing this to yourself." Mind
Ouch. Ouch.
blown.
That
Mm.
would have hit home.
I, that instance and that phrase coming from that person in that exact situation and the fight that we were in
Mm.
changed everything.
Oh,
Like,
wow.
my
Yeah.
mind just all of a sudden went, oh, oh my God, I've been doing everything to myself. I actually am in full control of the situation. I don't have to be here if I do not want to
Mm.
be here. And I do not want to be here. Like, I don't want to be another statistic where I was abused in childhood and now I'm the abuser. I am being abused, which is exactly what I was in all
Yeah.
of my relationships in this exact moment.
Well,
And I
congratulations.
couldn't do it anymore. I
That's
couldn't do it.
awesome.
I looked at
Yeah.
it and I was like, I'm not even disgusted by you. That's a whole other thing. I'm disgusted by myself right
Mm.
now that I'm allowing this to happen to me, despite me watching it growing up, despite me knowing what is going to happen because of this. It's like the generational trauma. I finally was like, no, I'm stopping the cycle. Thank you so much for telling me this because it changed my life forever.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to give him credit because he doesn't deserve it, but like it was his words that
Well, you welcomed him in, and that happened divine timing, and it was all called in by your higher self, and you got that because we get signals so much that we don't notice. In every relationship, there would have been those pivotal points, and you would have been so in it, not ready to transition out of it, that you wouldn't have seen it. And we keep rinsing, repeating. I remember sitting there so many times with my toxic. I always went for the bad boy because I knew he'd leave. I had massive abandonment issues, so I was always attracting the guy that was going to leave. And I remember going, "Why does it always happen to me? They always leave me." Hello. My dad left when the day I was born. So of course you actually create your external environment depending on what is happening within you. So well done for looking at it and not allowing the ego to go, oh screw you, you're not right, I'm right, and allowing it to actually
mm-hmm,
happen. So it was that perfect timing. And then what did you do? So
it was.
what was your journey from there?
So it really was at that point that I decided, okay, I'm in control of the situation. I'm in control of my life.
Mm,
What do I want my life to look like?
yeah.
Because I was letting all of these men and this toxic relationships, and essentially that was my trauma being manifested into my present being and my present life. So it's like, what do I want my life to even look like? My life has been just nonstop my trauma being manifested. Was any of it what I wanted? Was anything in my current life things that I enjoyed? Were any of my hobbies my hobbies? Was my work my work? Like I just
With
started to
yourself.
finally
Yeah.
question. I
Big
finally started
decisions,
to
big questions
question,
too. Really big
but
questions.
I needed to. And this is something that
Mm.
I always loved about myself is I wasn't scared to have the hard conversations with myself. I just wasn't the best at then recognizing and putting into action. I would say to myself, being like, oh, you know, you're better than this, or you know, you deserve
Yeah.
more, or what are you doing? But I would just be like, nope, I'm just going to ignore it.
Yeah.
But I couldn't ignore it anymore. It was just so blatantly obvious. And so I just started asking myself those hard questions. And I'll never forget my first meditation where I turned off all the lights in my house and I put on a really nice mood lighting. I put on a guided meditation. I was mid meditation and they said a very specific word. And all I did was felt my body melt and I burst into tears,
Oh,
uncontrollable
release.
tears. And in that exact moment, sitting with my own thoughts and being connected with my body, I finally felt safe. I
Mm,
finally felt, oh, I'm getting emotional.
mm,
Okay.
yep.
And like I could start to trust myself again because I had made so many terrible decisions up until that point. I had hurt so many
Mm,
people. I'd hurt myself for so many years by ignoring this and not healing
yeah.
that when I finally decided to take care of myself and go inward, I couldn't help but be overcome with emotions and be like, wow, this is what it feels like to be safe. This is what it feels like to trust. And
Mm.
that little moment, I shouldn't even say little, that very
No,
massive moment,
that life-changing moment.
it truly gave me the reassurance that
Mm,
I would be okay
mm.
and that I didn't need anyone. I just needed to take care of myself.
It's huge, huge. And when you're in survival mode for pretty much all your life, to have and this is the whole reparenting thing, you probably never felt like you were being nurtured. So, to really nurture and love yourself in that moment is fucking huge. It's like, oh, I get it. I get to give this to me. And we go so many times we're looking for it externally and we're feeding those patterns and the programs and all the different things that have happened for us that we don't look within. And it is all a within job. And most of the times, like you said, we don't want to look within because it's like, oh, Jesus Christ, what's in there? So that's another thing. So, what a huge moment. That must have just been, oh, I don't even know if you could describe it. To come back to yourself, to reconnect that way, is huge.
And it's really hard when you have been on a path for so long and you don't recognize yourself
Don't know
and you
if
don't like who you see in the mirror. And that was the hardest part for me was looking at myself every day. The deeper I got into these relationships, the further I ran away from my past, the further I ran away from any kind of uncomfortable feelings. I didn't like who I was. And that bothered me
Mm.
so much. It bothered me that I didn't like the woman I was becoming because I always felt like I'm that strong, independent woman. People looked up to me. People saw this strong, resilient, amazing
Mm.
woman who conquered her goals and she was constantly striving for more. But when it came down to it, I was like, wow, I put on a really good facade because
Yeah.
all of these people who think I'm all, sunshine and rainbows and the sun shines out my ass, like, I
They
don't
got
even
no
like
idea.
myself. Like, how do
But
they
we're good at
like
that,
me? And
aren't
I'm
we?
like,
We're good at putting on masks. We're good at putting on, and this is the thing: when you've been in survival mode for so long from childhood, you become the primary fear is belonging. So you do what you need to belong, because if you don't belong, where the hell are you going to be? Especially when you're a child. So you mold yourself into the person that you think you need to be able to be in the situation that you're in. So then when you start realizing, of, well, who the fuck am I? I actually don't even know this person. Like, it's like, who are you? That can be really tough, because then you're like, well, if I'm not that, then what am I? And it's a whole journey, isn't it?
it is. And it's really common in situations like that, like you said, to mold, but it's also to morph into partners. I find that a lot of codependency is very, very common in situations like that.
Yeah.
And well, what happens if you break up? What if your friends are only their friends? What if your hobbies are only their hobbies? What if your likes and dislikes are only their likes and dislikes? And all of a sudden they're gone. Now you got to mold yourself to a new person. Like you have nothing to rely on. And that was really hard too, because I mean, of course, I did it. Like I constantly was looking for that sense of belonging and just wanting to be liked. And the second that I stepped into my own being and I decided that I was going to be unapologetically myself, what I did to do that was I went back to childhood and I looked at where my joy was taken away from me.
Oh, I love that.
And I realized, you know what I love to do? I love singing and dancing around my apartment like a total idiot to anything. And I used to get made fun of by partners for that.
Yeah.
And so I shied away from doing it. And that joy was taken away from me. I noticed that I loved being outdoors and I loved being active to just to let a lot of energy and to be
Mm.
competitive. A lot of men didn't like that I was better at sports than them. They didn't like that I was super competitive and I would beat them at things. So what did I do?
You dumb
I was
yourself down.
nice and quiet and I dumbed myself down. And I have to say, through all of this as well, there was a part of me that when I decided that enough was enough and I really wanted to step into my power and be unapologetically myself, I just assumed that I would never be able to date again. I was like, that's it. You know what?
That's it. I'm
I
done.
can't be I can't be with anyone because what if I'm going to mold to them? What if they're not going to like this
Yeah.
about me? What if they're not going to like this about me as I'm trying to go through these motions and be me? Like I, I was so scared. And I was like, well, you can't heal in a relationship. You have to be healed first. And the beauty of all of this was the person was in front of me for years. And
Oh,
he
wow.
was one of the people that I hurt. Now, how many years later, through my healing and through me being unapologetically myself and just being self aware and honest with him about, hey, um, you know what? I made some mistakes. I was not being myself because I've been scared to be myself. It's not safe to be myself. When I finally was honest through the whole situation, this unconditional love for me,
Yeah.
me for myself, but also that he gave to me. He gave me a space to be me. He was like,
Love it.
okay, that's okay. If you are serious about this and you are genuinely serious that that wasn't you, show me. Do what you got to do, and I will give you the space to do so.
Wow. That's so beautiful. When the masculine holds a space for the feminine, it's so beautiful. Oh,
The best part is he didn't even know that he did it.
they never
I talked
knew.
to him. I he either listens to a podcast episode that I do with someone or he listens to something that I've written and he's like, I did that for you. I'm like, you are just walking around like a good human and you're just doing this to do this. You're not even trying. That's what I love about you. Like, you do so much.
I love it, but it pisses me off. Why wasn't I like that? No, it's
That too. I'm
beautiful.
just like, oh
Yeah.
damn, you just walk around being that good.
This is
Like,
normal. I remember when I started, because I went through my like big explosion, and then I started healing. And I used to go from man to man. I decided I was going to have 3 years by myself. And I remember meeting my husband now, because I was never getting married. I was that sort of a victim because I'm not getting married, no point. Watched my mum go through 3 divorces. I'm like, I'm not fucking putting myself in that situation. And the barriers went up, and then I met my husband, and I was like, oh, you're just too nice. Is there really people out there that are that nice? I mean, his heart is the biggest heart of any person I know. And the same thing, and I actually, I don't know if you struggled, but I actually struggled with how nice he was to me, because at that stage I didn't think I deserved it, because I was a bitch. I'd done all the, like similar things, I'm sure, to what you talk about, and you still hold that guilt, because guilt's the hardest emotion to process, right? So I had this beautiful man come in, and I'm like, I'm not worthy of you. There's no fucking way I'm worthy of you. So I don't know for you, but I found it really hard to, and I tried to push him away so much. It was very hard to actually receive that sort of love, and to be seen and to be held and to have that. Did you go through that as well? Was that something that you were like, oh, okay?
100%. And I've heard this very frequently in the past couple of years is that the healthy relationship after the hardest one, or sorry, the healthiest relationship after the toxic one will always be the hardest. The toxic one won't be the hardest. The healthiest one
Yeah.
after the toxic relationship will be the hardest because you've learned so many negative patterns that you are going to push them away. You are going to think you're unworthy of that love. You're not going to trust them. You're going to second guess everything they say to you because your brain is going to tell you, nope, this isn't true. When is it
Yeah.
going to go bad? They're lying to you.
Your
And
ego's a
I went
bitch,
through
right?
that.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that.
And
That's such a good way of putting
I
it.
self sabotaged. I self sabotaged the relationship. We didn't work the first time around, kind of.
You can laugh about
I
it
laugh
now,
about
right?
I laugh about this because today is our anniversary. It's very funny. I'm talking about this. I'm just like, oh, it's all in timing.
Wow.
But I did. I sabotaged our relationship, and for the freaking unknown reason, he saw that
You were
I
trying.
did truly love him and that I was just unfortunately going through something unexplainable because he had never been through what I had been through as a child, as a young adult. And then as an adult too, because my childhood trauma manifested into multiple abusive relationships. And it was a endless cycle of me trying to run away or fight. And
Yeah.
I ran from him. And then I came back and then I tried to fight it. And then I ran away again.
Oh, you did more than once. Oh, jeez.
It honestly, like,
Oh.
the most beautiful part of all of it is being able to heal
Mm.
in a relationship and have it be so healthy and a learning experience for both of you. Because I did an episode yesterday with a gentleman where he said, when you are in a healthy relationship, your trauma becomes their trauma
Mm.
because they are now a direct reflection and of every action that you do after trauma. Every
Your
negative
mirror.
pattern that you've learned goes on to them. The way that you react because of a certain trauma, you react towards them, and then that becomes their norm. And everything is so deeply connected. So, for me to be able to heal in this relationship and us learn this together and how to navigate things together has been the ultimate bonding experience.
Mm.
And it's not a trauma bond, because we all know that those are the worst. It is a true unconditional love for two individuals who are just trying to figure out life together. And it's beautiful.
Mm. Mm. It is. I love that. It's so. You often don't think that because I mean, every time you react or every time you have some sort of emotional charge when you're with your partner or anybody else, it's never about them. It's always about you. It's like, And I had this happen the other day. Actually, there was something happened, and I responded, and I was like, "Oh, oh, why did I respond that way?" And when you understand the depth of it, and you can just go into it and to process it and allow it and to feel it, then it's good. But when you're doing it in the time and you're like, "Oh, it's them, it's not me," and then it's very toxic. And you do. I never really thought of that they get all of your trauma as well. My husband must be exhausted.
I think about that sometimes. I'm like, wow, my boyfriend has like a nice chemically balanced brain. He has a nice normal childhood. I'm like, you are how do you go about your life? What do you do all day? What do you think about all day? Because
Did I have
I would
yours
love to give you
instead?
half of my brain. Can we switch? Would you like to? No?
No. I'm like you. I believe that there's two brains in this world. I believe there's a hunter brain and there's a farmer brain. And the hunter brain is like you and I. We're like go go go, zzz, and we get PTSD and we're depression and that because our brain is just always going, always going. And then like my
Hmm.
husband, you've got the farmer, and they're the ones that are quite controlled. They're quite balanced. They're grounded. They're just going on about their journey. This is what it is. And I really find that the people that are the most that usually hold a lot of trauma are people like us. It's like zzz. So it's very intensified, and it's why we don't like he's had trauma things, but he heals as he goes. Where I've just like you block it all out and just this like until it absolutely fucking explodes in my head, and I have to deal with it. The older version of me, obviously, but it's. I think your partner is somebody who, and when you call in and we're ready to receive the right partner. It's such a beautiful balance because you each teach each other, like, and you'll be teaching him just as much as what he's teaching you as well, without even realizing. So it's beautiful that he held the space for you to keep coming back, and he realized and understood what you were going through. Special man, such a special man. And how many years you been together now?
4.
4.
Yeah, it's 4 now. It's 4 now. So it's it's also been very interesting and intense watching him grow as a person because of me. And I think that having his nice, rainbows and unicorns and little bubble of a life, he didn't fully understand
Yeah.
there were other sides of it. He didn't fully understand how things could just be different, but in your own backyard.
Mm.
Because it's not like we grew up in different countries. It's not like we are of different cultures. It's not like there is a very obvious difference between us. It's just that our childhoods looked very, very different. And so that makes your brain develop very, very different. And it's not that he is ignorant or blind to the world. It's just that your surroundings are your middle ground. It is what you compare everything to. It's what you have your vantage point to be. So being open to seeing my life and seeing what, I've gone through and really being able to stop and then take that in as a different perspective, it
Mm.
has definitely shaped him into being a better person as well. And I can say that confidently because I just see that the way he is more compassionate and he thinks twice about things and he's kinder in certain ways. And seeing that is really nice too. It's not like, okay, it's not like all bad came out of this trauma.
Yeah.
It's there's other beautiful aspects where we can teach each other and grow together. And
Yeah.
he can show me that life doesn't actually have to be so hard. And
No.
there is hope and there are, potential for having a successful marriage, maybe. Because I was very like, I'm
Rose.
not getting married. I'm not having kids. I ain't doing any of this because it all fails and everyone ends up hating you anyways. I
That's pretty much it. That's pretty much
was
in a
like, oh,
nutshell, right? Never say never is what I've learned to
So
say.
yeah, it's just, I think that the best relationships truly are where you're learning from each other, you're growing from each other. And if you can help each other become a better version of themselves and just become a better person, those are the ones that I see thrive.
Mm, absolutely, Absolutely. And also for us being through trauma and being through the different things that we have when we're a child, knowing that you have someone there to hold the space and sometimes just listen and just allow you. And like my hubby knows he's like, when I haven't meditated, he'll be like, have we meditated today? And I'm like, oh, actually, no, I haven't. He's like, off you go. Like, just someone that can help hold you accountable in a beautiful way, in a loving space. And like, he's picked me up off the shower when I've been in, probably it's like same as Dani as your husband. When you've been processing stuff and held you and put you into bed and wrapped you up, and just knowing that you have that sense of that there it's huge, especially for someone who's been through massive trauma or any trauma. It's a big thing. It really, really is. But I do
Yeah.
believe that you have to go through the time where, like you said before, that you have to heal yourself. Because when you're the best version of you, when you get to a stage where you can hold the space to be in that relationship or whatever it is, then it's crucial. It's crucial.
Well, our relationship wouldn't have been able to progress and be successful if I didn't take this seriously. It's not that I'm doing it for him, but I'm doing it for myself, which in turn is for every relationship in my life. It doesn't mean it's just for someone romantically, it's also for my family.
Yeah.
I can't show up as the best version of me if I'm not taking care of what is going on internally. And that translates to everything. It's going to be the way that you produce your work. It's going to be the way that you walk down the street, your confidence, the way that you love, where the way that you don't receive love, or you don't accept love. Like everything is so intertwined and deeply connected. And that was something that was hard for me to realize too, was like, I just assumed that I was a great friend. I assumed I was a great daughter. I had this a little bit of a superiority complex, thinking that I was just so good at everything that I did. And it was a
Yeah.
really nice reality check to be like, okay, you don't, maybe you're not perfect at everything, but maybe this is an opportunity to, instead of trying to be perfect, just be you and figure out who that is. And now I'm at a point where I'm like, I love who I am, and everything in my life is falling into place because of that.
Because of
It's like
that.
I'm receiving the abundance that I deserve. I'm receiving the love I deserve. I am receiving the best relationships that are being nurtured, and they are long lasting now because I all finally deserve it. And it's it's crazy how this all just comes back around when you finally start to be self aware and you finally start to turn inward instead of blaming things or
Victim.
being the victim. It's just so crazy because I always knew it, but I didn't want to believe it. I didn't want to actually believe I could do all of that for myself because I would have already. I would have just done it already if it was that easy. Well,
Good
it's
old
not
easy.
easy,
It's
but
not.
it definitely is
Yeah.
possible.
Yeah. Do you find that during your healing journey that you've actually been helping heal your family? Have you seen a difference in your mum and your father and all those people around you with what the work you're doing?
Yes, it it's absolutely amazing to see the difference in the way that people speak to me. It's amazing in the way that people approach me with sensitive topics of their own where they feel comfortable saying certain things to me. Um, the relationships that I have are stronger because we are more comfortable having difficult conversations. There's less conflict, but there doesn't mean that there's less uncomfortable conversations. It just means that they can happen in a very safe space where neither side feel very judged or like there is a reason to make someone the bad person out of it. It's just everything can happen now in such a constructive way that we can have these conversations. And I think that's the hardest part with family.
Yeah. The
No one
emotional
wants to
part.
rock the boat.
Nope.
No one wants to disrupt the family because
No one
Easter's
wants to
next
admit
week and
they're
we have
wrong.
to get together. And it's like, well, if we just talked about this, like maybe.
It's interesting.
And I would love to say that my family has come a long way, but they haven't. it's just like they're dipping their toe in the water and they see a change in me and I can tell that they're right there. And I'm like, oh, I'm gonna get to you. I'm gonna get to you.
Yeah, it's gonna happen. And the funny thing is that you don't know what's going on when they're by themselves. They're probably actually, because I believe that when I started my healing journey, my mum was victim one on one. She was lived in struggle, and so that's the only place I knew. If I wasn't struggling, I didn't feel like I was myself. I didn't know how to belong. And I was always the victim. And when I was really quite about 2 or 3 years into my healing journey, and there was something big that happened, and usually she'd be on the phone going, "Oh my God, get out of there. This is," I was the volcano in Bali. "Get out! Oh my God, like there's a volcano. You're gonna be hurt. You're gonna die." Because she would go right to the worst. I remember hearing me and just going, "Well, I know that you're going to do what you need to do, and that if you need to stay there, then stay there. And I know that if you don't feel safe, then you'll leave." And I was like, who is this on the other end of the phone? Like, it was really, and I remember getting off the phone, I just cried and cried and cried because I knew that what I was doing, I was helping her. And I was holding the space for her without her even realizing to grow. So from that experience, honestly, when any sort of healing that anybody does is always reflecting everywhere else, especially in the generational stuff. And if you do have kids, oh my goodness, I wish my mum had done the work.
Me too.
Why was it all
Uh,
me?
mm,
Anyway.
you know what? But I'm glad it's me.
Me too.
Honestly, like taking all of this into consideration, I can look at my mother's situation and I can be like,
Compassion.
you know what? It was generational trauma for you too. And it manifested, and now it manifested into your daughters. And I can just see it so clearly. It doesn't mean that I still don't have some anger. It doesn't mean that I still don't have a little bit of resentment. It doesn't mean that I don't have a lot of feelings towards her or towards the situation of my childhood. It just means that I can look at it a little bit more logically in the sense of you didn't do this all 100% on purpose
Mm-hmm.
because no one in their right mind would do anything that happened 100% on purpose. And I think that it's confusing for a lot of people when I say that I can look at her with a lot of compassion and I can look at the situation with a lot of compassion because they're like, well, no, like that's not right. And I'm like, well, no, it isn't. It doesn't mean it's okay. It doesn't mean that I accept it as something that was supposed to be a loving, nurturing mother's job. It just means that I can look at it and I can just finally come to terms and understand because if she had someone like me as a mother, this never would have happened.
Mm-hmm.
She didn't. She had who
No.
she had. She was the person of her surroundings, and she became who she was
Yeah.
because of her surroundings too.
Mm.
And I'm now the person I am because of my surroundings. Like I had many years to work on this, and it's just not that easy. It's just not that easy to look at and be like, you did this, you're a bad person for this. It's like, well, we're all not perfect. I hate saying that, but I just look at her with a little bit more compassion now that I've gone through this process.
And that's really beautiful, and that brings in a deeper level of love. And for me, I did a lot of forgiveness work around it. Mine was the male side in my family, and and I always say that everyone's doing the best they can with what they've been given, and it's up to you to break that cycle. And you can spend all your life blaming everybody else, and if you do, you're just gonna be fucking miserable, and you're just gonna, as you say, like rinse and repeat. So, you know, for the people that are listening, take a stance and take ownership of your life and decide that today's the day that I'm going to make a change for me. And, and do those questions that Dani said, they're freaking awesome, Ask yourself those deep questions that you need to ask yourself. And start the journey. But it always is with self. If we spend our life blaming everybody else, we're going to be miserable. You attract everything in your life, 100%. So, what is the one thing that you'd like to leave the audience with, that you'd like to just share, whatever flows through, anything that you'd like to leave them with?
I think that something I didn't expect in all of my healing journey was just how important it is if you have been through something in childhood. to go back to childhood and be playful again. Give yourself permission to laugh, give yourself permission to feel joy in silly things, because being an adult is hard. We don't need to make it even harder. We should have fulfillment and joy. And it's okay to, especially if you were robbed of some of that joy as a child, like you can find that again and you can definitely experience that again. And that was hard for me to accept because I felt like I needed to just be an adult and buck up and do what you got to do and just pay taxes and then I'll get a good job and I'll die that way. And it's like, no, it doesn't have to just be like that. Like this healing journey can also be full of laughter and it can be full of joy, and I can sing in my underwear and dance around my apartment if I want to. If that's what brings me joy today, that's what I'm going to do. And being playful, especially in a relationship too, is very important.
Yeah, and when you've got trauma, being seen like that is definitely something that's hard. And I loved it when you said earlier on, when you said, I went back to the point where I lost my joy when I was a child. That was friggin' awesome. That was like, boom. Yep, let's go back there. And that's there's always a place to start, and wherever you start, it's going to be perfect. But definitely, I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that. And thank you
so much for having me. Yay! I loved it.
It's so much fun. I loved it. It's amazing. You can talk about such a deep subject, but you can just have such a beautiful, interaction, and it can be fun. And I love that. Dance around naked. Go do it.
Why not?
Why not?
It brings me joy.
Where I am, there's too many windows, so I don't know if I could do that right now, but I might give a lot of people a thrill.
That's hilarious.
So thank you so much for coming on, beautiful. I really appreciate it, and I know that anyone who's listening would have got lots of beautiful wisdom, and just sharing what you've been through would have helped them out a lot. And there was lots of little gold nuggets in there. So if you're listening, listen again, because it was just amazing. So thank you so much, Dani. I really appreciate it. And that is another episode of The Art of Quantum Healing.
Thank you so much for listening to today's podcast. Please make sure to subscribe to my channel and help us grow the community by sharing it with your friends. I am your host, Leisa Nadler, and this is The Art of Quantum Healing.